frequency on different polarization mechanisms, and also the effect of temperature on polarization processes. So the effect of frequency on different polarization processes will be different depending on the nature of the mechanism. And electronic polarization, it is extremely rapid and essentially completes for each cycle of applied electric field. That means it gives response instantaneously. There is no time lag between the applied field frequency and the response. So they are extremely rapid, and because in this the movement of electron flow and nucleus is involved, whenever the electric material subjected to an external electric field of optical frequency, immediately charge separation takes place. Relatively, the electron flow and nucleus will be moving in the opposite direction, causing the dipoles and exhibiting polarization. So it reduces response for optical frequencies, which is of the order of 24 or 15 hertz. And ionic polarization, it is a little bit slower than this electronic polarization, except for optical frequencies. For the remaining frequencies, it gives response, because in this it involves the movement of much heavier ion when you compare with the electron flow. So it takes then generally it takes a little bit time, so that slowly the ions move in the direction of the applied electric field, giving rise to ionic polarization. And orientation polarization is a little bit slower than even in for ionic polarization, and it occurs only in the audible range of frequency, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. For this frequency of applied electric field, the movement of polar molecules in the direction of electric field occurs, so that they give polarization, which is the orientation polarization. And space charge polarization is the slowest process, because here in the presence of the field, the charge carriers will accumulate at different phases of multi-phase materials. They have to travel several atomic distances. So only at machine frequencies, at very low frequency only, you can expect this space charge polarization. So in this way, the effective frequency on different polarization processes will be different. And the relation between polarization in terms of time is P is equal to P naught into 1 minus e to the power of minus e t by t tau, where t tau is a relaxation time, the time taken for which the polarization completes 63% or 0.63%. It is called as relaxation time. So in this way, the effect of a frequency will be there on the different polarization processes. And effect of temperature, there is no, because electronic polarization, ionic polarization occur in a very micro level in the given dielectric material, so they are independent of temperature. And the orientation polarization and the space charge polarization, they depend on temperature. And the effect of temperature on orientation polarization can be twofold. It means sometimes by increasing the temperature, the dielectric constant or polarization value decreases. Sometimes, as the temperature increases, in some cases, the dielectric constant or polarization will be increased. So, a simple example, you take a HCl molecule, and whenever HCl is subjected to external electric field, all the dipoles are created H+, and Cl- ions, they align in the direction of the field. But when the temperature rises, then what happens is the thermal energy is used to randomize the dipoles so that they take random orientation. Previously, they are in the direction of the field, but in the presence of the temperature, as the temperature rises, they take random orientation. So dielectric constant decreases, polarization also value will also be decreasing in this case. And if you take benzene, which is a relatively large polar molecule, and when benzene is subjected to external electric field, it takes much time, because very part of it is 20 to 30% of the polar molecules of benzene will align in the direction of the field because of the heaviness. But when the temperature of benzene rises, then this thermal energy aids to supplying thermal energy given to the material, will help in aligning the dipoles in the direction of the field. So when in the presence of a high temperature, all these polar molecules, they orient in the direction of the field, so that the dielectric constant increases and polarization value also increases. The maximum polarization can be achieved for this. So it can be twofold. For different cases, the impact of temperature will be different in case of orientation polarization. And space charge polarization, It also depends on temperature. As the temperature increases, this thermal energy will help for diffusing the charges at the interfaces of the multi-phase material so that the polarization or dielectric constant increases. So this is the impact of temperature on various polarization processes. Up to this, we have studied in the last class. Now, the next topic is you take down determination of dielectric constant sharing bridge method. Could you able to see the presentation, students? Somebody respond?
No, sir.
It's not visible? Okay, I'll once again. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Take the heading, determination of dielectric constant, sharing bridge method. Take the heading only. Determination of dielectric constant, sharing bridge method. First you listen, then you give time so that you can note down the circuit. In another slide also, I'm displaying this. Write down determination of dielectric constant, sharing bridge method. SEHERING, sharing bridge method. So sharing bridge method, it is an important method which can be used to measure the dielectric constant of a given medium or dielectric constant of a given material by using the sharing bridge method. In the basic introductory class, we have discussed the term dielectric constant, which is the ratio of permittivity of medium to permittivity of free space, or the dielectric constant is represented by CdC by C, where CdC is the capacitance with the dielectric and C is the capacitance without dielectric. So you take dielectric material, you place between the plates of a capacitor and find out the capacitance. That is CdC, the capacitance of the capacitor with the dielectric. Now you remove the dielectric material, dielectric slab, and find out the capacitance without dielectric, that is C. So the dielectric constant is represented by epsilon r is equal to CdC by C. It is the ratio of the capacitance without dielectric to the capacitance with the dielectric to the capacitance without dielectric. Please note down this. Sharing bridge method used for measuring dielectric constant of a given medium, and the dielectric constant is epsilon r is equal to CdC by C, where CdC is capacitance with dielectric, C is capacitance without dielectric. Note down this. Shall I proceed, girls? Somebody respond?
Yes, sir.
Now, before that, you take down this diagram, sharing bridge circuit diagram, and also in the left side, I wrote something. What is R1, C1? The circuit related parameters. Please, you should draw the circuit even in the exam. You have an idea of Wheatstone bridge? Anyone? Did you study in your intermediate?
Yes, sir.
What is the condition for Wheatstone bridge? Balancing the bridge?
P by Q is equal to R by S.
What are PQRS?
Resistance.
Very good, very good. Yeah. The same concept we are using, but in an alternating field. That is the difference, which is sharing bridge. So you take this circuit diagram, It is downloaded from the website in academic scholarly articles. Only the Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4 for understanding sake. You can write for the better understanding. You have to draw. Once you come to offline class, I will check the notes. What points I have explained, I am noting here. You should bring the notes once I call you, and you have to show the notes also. This 1.5 months, you should be very serious because online will try to complete the syllabus, theory syllabus at least 4 to 4.5 minutes before offline lab sessions, and that is extremely hectic. So your presence physically and mentally is very required in each and every class because it's up to because again April 3rd you have internal exams, external exams, then external lab exams. So up to May you have a series of examinations. So what you want to consolidate, you better consolidate now itself. So listen to each and every class. If you have doubts, you interact with the teacher, but don't skip because online you can't catch cold physically. It doesn't mean you can enjoy, not at the cost of academics. If you keep it in mind. Did you complete the circle, students?
Writing points, sir.
Okay. Girls, somebody respond from girls. Copying, girls, taking the circle.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll wait 1 2 minutes. This also you write. R1 is a series resistance representing the loss in the capacitor. So as I said, sharing bridge method, it is used to determine the dielectric constant of any solid dielectric material. So this is very useful and important technique method so that we can find out the dielectric constant of solid materials. And it is the modified form of Wheatstone bridge. Sharing bridge is the modified form of Wheatstone bridge. As one of you have said, Wheatstone bridge is used to determine the unknown resistance. The condition for balancing the bridge is P by Q is equal to R by S. So basically it consisting of 4 arms, and in each arm one resistor is connected, and between two ends a volt 5 volts battery is connected. Between the other two ends a galvanometer is connected. And once some voltage is given and the current flows within the circuit, V is equal to IR, and the condition for balancing the bridge is whenever there is P by Q is equal to R by S ratio is not satisfied, the galvanometer shows some positive or negative deflection. But when the condition is perfectly satisfied, that is P by Q is equal to R by S, then the bridge is said to be balanced and the galvanometer shows null deflection. So this method is useful to determine the unknown resistance. Suppose you want to find out the resistance of a solid material, it is connected in Wheatstone bridge, and through 3 known resistors are connected as it is, and some voltage is allowed to pass through the circuit, and the condition is applied. P by Q is equal to R by S. You should be adjusted, resistor should be adjusted, variable resistor, in such a way that galvanometer shows 0 deflection. So once a 0 deflection is obtained, the condition is satisfied, which is P by Q is equal to R by S. So P, Q, R are known resistors. So you can put those values and you can find out the unknown resistance. This is the logic behind this Wheatstone bridge. The same we are going to apply in sharing bridge method also. So in sharing bridge method also, four arms are there. In each arm, first arm, it is written in the diagram unknown branch. In that, a resistor R1 is connected with the series to a capacitor C1. So C1 is a capacitor whose capacitance is to be measured. So according to the definition of dielectric constant, it is the dielectric constant, it is a ratio of capacitance of the dielectric, the capacitance of a capacitor with the dielectric to the capacitance of a capacitor without dielectric. So C1 is the capacitance, capacitor whose capacitance to be measured. It is connected in series with a resistor R1. In the second arm, you can see a variable resistor R3 is connected. So you can change the resistor. You can change the value of the resistor. So R3 is connected. Here in the below, in the another third one, another C2, a standard capacitor is connected. And in the fourth arm, again a resistor, a variable capacitor connected parallel as shown in the figure, C4 and R4. And between the top and bottom of this, a deflection galvanometer, a null detector is connected, and whenever the condition is satisfied, P by Q is equal to R by S, this null detector, it shows a zero deflection. And between the two other extremes of this Wheatstone circuit, a high frequency oscillator is connected. From this, you can apply alternating electric field. This is the circuit diagram. First, you see the circuit once again. C1 R1, where there the term can be treated as P, and where the resistor R3 is connected, it is Q, and where the standard capacitor C2 is there, that is R, and where R4 and C4 connected in parallel, it is S. So P by Q is equal to R by S condition should be satisfied. Once again, Wheatstone bridge. You know the principle of Wheatstone bridge. Sharing bridge is a modified form of a Wheatstone bridge which works in AC circuits. And in the first arm, a resistor and a capacitor are connected in series. And C1 is the capacitor whose capacitance to be measured. So these are connected in series in the first arm. And in the second arm Q, a variable resistor R3 is connected. And in the third arm, that is R, a standard capacitor C2 is connected. And in the fourth arm S, a resistor, variable resistor R4 and a variable capacitor C4 are connected in parallel as shown in the figure. And between the two extremes, a null detector is connected, AC null detector. When the condition is satisfied, this null detector shows certain zero deflection. And a high frequency oscillator at the bottom, you can see the symbol of oscillator is there. A high frequency oscillator is connected as shown in the figure. And also in AC circuits, in DC circuits, the expression for resistance is V is equal to IR or R is equal to V by I. In AC circuits, it is called as the reactance of a capacitor, which is represented by 1 by J omega C. That is, in DC circuits, what is the role played by this resistor R is played by 1 by J omega C in AC circuits. So this is called as a reactance of a capacitor. In some books, it is called as a reactance only. But in AC circuits, the reactance of a capacitor, it is represented by 1 by J omega C, where J square is -1, which is an imaginary term, omega is angular frequency, and C is the capacitance. So 1 by J omega C, so the resistance through the capacitor in alternating circuits can be represented by 1 by J omega C, where J square is -1, omega is angular frequency, and C is the capacitance. Is it okay, students? Somebody respond.
Okay, sir.
Yes. So in AC circuits, the resistance along the capacitor is represented by 1 by J omega C, which is called as reactance of a capacitor, where J square is -1, Omega is angular frequency and C is the capacitance. So what is in the circuit you can see what is the effective resistance in the first arm of PA, that is Z1. So in series circuit it is R1 plus R2 plus R3 like that. So the first resistance is R1 plus the reactance of a capacitor, that is the resistance through this C1, it is represented by 1 by j omega C1 as I told, where j square is -1, omega is angular frequency and C1 is the capacitance of the capacitor. And in the R this one here where the standard capacitor is connected, that can be written as Z2 is equal to 1 by j omega C2, because in AC circuits the reactance of a capacitor is represented by 1 by j omega C2. In the arm Q it is only R3 is there, therefore Z3 is equal to R3. And in the arm 4 you can see a variable resistor R4 is connected and variable capacitor C1 is connected in parallel. So in parallel circuit 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. The same we are writing here, that is you are naming it as Z4 effective resistance. Z4 is equal to 1 by this Y4, this branch, which is nothing but 1 by the resistance here is 1 by R4 plus, and C4 is 1 by j omega C4 will become j omega C4. And this is the condition, Z1 by Z2 is equal to Z3 by Z4. P by Q is equal to R by S. So this is the expression for the arm-wise resistance in sharing bridge. Please note down this also. If you have any doubt, you can ask immediately. In series circuit, R is equal to R1 plus R2. So in the first term, let us the effective impedance is Z1, that is R1 plus R2. R1 plus it is the reactance of a capacitor C1, which is represented by 1 by j omega C1. So the effective resistance is Z1 is equal to, or P is equal to R1 plus 1 by j omega C1. And in the third arm, it is C2 standard capacity is there. So the effective reactance is represented by Z2 is equal to 1 by j omega C2. That is R is equal to 1 by j omega C2. And in the second arm Q, there is only a resistor. So Z3 is equal to R3. So Q is equal to R3 only. In the fourth arm, a resistor, variable resistor R4 and a variable capacitor C4 are connected in parallel. In parallel circuit, 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. The same we are doing here. So this is 1 by R4 plus 1 by j omega C4. So this becomes j omega C4 only. In this way we are defining PQRS. The condition for balancing the bridge is P by Q is equal to R by S. So the condition for balancing the bridge is P by Q is equal to R by S. We have discussed the same in another representative, same only. P is equal to R1 plus 1 by j omega C1, just now we have discussed. And R is 1 by j omega C2 because standard capacity is there. And Q is equal to R3 because only one resistor is there. And in the fourth arm, the effective resistance 1 by S is equal, it is a parallel connection, 1 by R4 plus 1 by j omega C4. Therefore, S is equal to R4 by 1 plus j omega R4 C4. Please note down this. The expressions for P, Q, R, and S. I think you should know what is series connection and parallel connection. I did not explain. First, you write the effective resistance in all four branches P, Q, R, and S. Then you write P by Q is equal to R by S. Then instead of P, you write R1 plus 1 by j omega C1 divided by Q is R3. So substitute R3 is equal to R. R is 1 by j omega C2 divided by S. S is R4 by 1 plus j omega R4 C4. Then you bring R4 to the left hand side, R3 to the right hand side. R1 plus 1 by j omega C1 into R4 is equal to R3 into 1 plus j omega R4 C4 by j omega C2. After taking this, in this you can find some real parts and imaginary parts, and they are equal. So you should equate all the real parts and imaginary parts. So once you equate all real and imaginary parts, you will be getting R1 is equal to R3 C4 by C2 and C1 is equal to R4 C2 by R3. You can simplify it and you can check. By simplifying, you can get R1 is equal to R3 C4 by C2 and C1 is equal to R4 C2 by R3. If you equate real and imaginary parts. So R1 is expressed in terms of known terms R3 C4 C2. R3 is known resistor, C4 C2 are known capacitor, so R1 can be calculated. Similarly C1 is R4 into C2 by R3. R4 and R3 are known and C2 is the standard capacitor, which value you know already, so that C1 can be calculated. So R1 and C1 can be obtained by using the relation R3 C4 by C2 and C1 is R4 C2 by R3. Because these are known values, R1 and C1 can be calculated. Please copy this. Shall I explain this once? Student? Anyone respond? Girls? Did somebody respond?
Yes, sir.
Shall I explain this once again? Not required.
Explain.
Okay. So the main idea here is Schaerer-Bridge method is used to determine the dielectric constant of a given material or dielectric constant of a medium. Material means it's a medium made up of some elements. The dielectric constant it is defined as the ratio of capacitance of a capacitor with dielectric to the capacitance without dielectric. So you should find out the capacitance with dielectric by introducing dielectric material. You should find out the capacitance, and you remove the dielectric material and measure the capacitance. This ratio will give you the dielectric constant or relative permittivity for a given material. So sharing bridge method, this is a modified form of a Wheatstone bridge. So in the Wheatstone bridge, it has 4 arms. In each arm, a resistor is connected P, Q, R, and S. And between two extreme points, a galvanometer is connected. Between the two other extreme points, a voltage source is connected, potentiometer is connected. Initially, by applying the voltage, the bridge is balanced by adjusting the resistors. Then galvanometer shows zero deflection in Wheatstone bridge. So once the galvanometer shows zero deflection, the bridge is said to be balanced, and the condition P by Q is equal to R by S is satisfied. So the advantage of this is, if you have 3 known resistors, you can find out the unknown resistance. You can connect simply that unknown resistance in the Wheatstone bridge arm, and using the condition, you adjust the resistors so that the galvanometer shows zero deflection. Then you can use P by Q is equal to R by S. Already you know the values of P, Q, R. You can calculate S value. So this is the way you can find out the unknown resistance. So sharing bridge is the modified form of this Wheatstone bridge. So in the first arm, that is in the arm where actually P resistor P is connected, here a resistor R1 is connected in series with a capacitor C1. R1 is a resistor representing loss in the capacitor, and C1 is the capacitor whose capacitance to be measured. And in the second arm, that is Q, a variable resistor R3 is connected. And in the third arm, that is R, excuse me, a standard capacitor C2 is connected. And in the fourth arm, that is S, again a variable resistor R4 and a variable capacitor C4 are connected in parallel. And between the top and bottom extremes, a null detector, AC null detector is connected. And between other two extremes, a high frequency oscillator is connected, which produces an alternating electric field. And one more thing you should understand, in AC circuits, here it is an AC circuit, alternating electric field is given. The reactance of a capacitor, that is the resistance which possessed by the capacitor material, it is 1 by j omega c, where j square is -1, omega is angular frequency, c is the capacitance. It is equivalent to the resistance in DC circuits. That you should understand. If you take the first arm, what is the effective resistance represented by Z1? P is equal to Z1, that is R1 plus. The reactance in C1 is 1 by j omega C1. And in the arm 3, that is R, you have R is equal to 1 by j omega C2, because only a standard capacitor is connected. So the effective reactance is 1 by j omega C2. In the third arm, only a variable resistor R3 is connected. So Z3 is equal to R3 only. But in the fourth arm, yes, a series resistor and a capacitor connected in parallel. So the effective resistance Z4 is, it is 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. That is 1 by R4 plus 1 by C4 is 1 by j omega C4. So 1 by j omega C4. And the condition for balancing the bridge is P by Q is equal to R by S. So the same here it is represented. Effectively, S is equal to R4 by 1 plus j omega R4 C4. And initially, the variable resistor R3 and the variable capacitor C4 are adjusted in such a way that the null detector shows a zero deflection. Then there is no dielectric. So without inserting the dielectric, the capacitance only the C1 is there, and the R3 and C4 are adjusted in such a way that the AC null detector shows a zero deflection. Once it shows null deflection, the bridge is said to be balanced, and you can adopt the condition P by Q is equal to R by S. So that condition is satisfied. Then you write the expressions for PQRS. As I said, P is the effective resistance in arm 1, that is R1 plus 1 by j omega C1, by Q is R3. So this is R3 is equal to R is 1 by j omega C2 divided by R4 is R4 by 1 by j omega R4 C4. So by simplifying this, taking R4 in the left hand side, R3 in the right hand side, you will be getting the next equation. Then R1, R4, R3, R4, C4 by C2 comes to the real part, where there is J, that is minus J into R4 by omega C1, minus J into R3 by omega C2, they come to the imaginary part. So by equating real and imaginary parts, finally we get R1 is equal to R3 C4 by C2, and C1 is equal to R4C2 by R2. So using this equation, C1 is equal to R4C2 by R3. R4 is the standard resistor. R3, what resistance you are varying, the value is known, and C2 is the capacitance of a standard capacitor. C1 can be calculated. So initially, without a dielectric, this C1 is connected, calculated. You should note down the value. Now what you have to do is you insert a dielectric slab between the plates of a capacitor. Again you have to adjust R3 as well as the C4 until the galvanometer null detector shows a zero deflection. Once it shows a zero deflection, the bridge is said to be balanced. So you can straight away take the C1 dash new capacitance because it is with dielectric. So C1 dash is equal to R4 by R3 into C2. Again, you take these values R4 and C2 because you will be getting different values here because you are changing R3 and C2, then only the bridge is balanced. Galvanometer null detector shows a zero deflection. So you will be getting a new capacitance which can be represented as C1 dash, which is the capacitance with the dielectric. So previously it is the capacitance without dielectric. Here it is the capacitance with the dielectric. This ratio, that is C1 dash by C1, will give you the dielectric constant of relative permittivity. So this way, in this way, the dielectric constant of a given material can be calculated using sharing bridge. Please take these steps. Still you have any doubt, you can ask. Is it okay, boys?
Yes, sir.
Please note on this. Girls,
Yes, sir.
did you copy this? Shall I wait?
Copied, sir.
Okay. Shall I go to the next topic? Next, you take the heading ferroelectricity. Last topic in this chapter. Ferroelectricity. And the first, take down the heading ferroelectric hysteresis. And you copy this diagram. I'll give you 2 minutes. Copy this diagram. Ferroelectricity. The subtopic is ferroelectric hysteresis. And you take this diagram. Make it fast. So in this ferroelectric hysteresis, this is called as a hysteresis curve. Electric field E is taken along the x-axis. The polarization P is taken along y-axis. Only this part I'll explain. You prepare notes for this. It is not there in the PPT. What points I'll explain, just you note those points. Did you copy, students?
Yes, sir.
Diagram. Hmm? Take this diagram. Otherwise, you take screenshot and if you listen carefully, another important phenomena that can be exhibited by dielectric material is ferroelectricity. So, dielectric materials which exhibit electric polarization even in the absence of external electric field are called as ferroelectric materials. That means they are permanent, they have permanent polarization, electric polarization because of its nature. These materials are called as ferroelectric materials. Most of the materials under the influence of external field, it exhibits polarization. As we discussed in the first class, a dipole is an entity in which equal positive and negative charges separated by certain distance. And whenever a material, the electric material is subjected to external electric field, all positive charges they move in the direction of the field, negative charges in the opposite direction, so that dipoles are created. And they exhibit certain force which is called as dipole moment. The dipole moment per unit volume is called as polarization. So whenever there is an external electric field, then only this charge separation takes place and they exhibit polarization. But there are some materials in which the polarization persists even in the absence of external field. That means even the external field is removed, they exhibit certain polarization and gives three times more dielectric constant values, and these are called as ferroelectric materials. So dielectric materials which exhibit electric polarization even in the absence of external magnetic field, external electric field, is called as ferroelectric material. So the dielectric constants of these materials, some three orders in magnitude larger than the ordinary dielectrics. Barium titanate, KH2PO4, Racheli salt, all these are examples of these ferroelectric materials. And an important phenomena that can be exhibited by a ferroelectric material is ferroelectric hysteresis. So the graph that represents the variation of polarization with respect to applied electric field is called as dielectric hysteresis. And remember, you have two types of hysteresis. One is magnetic hysteresis, we'll be reading in magnetic materials, and this is ferroelectric hysteresis. That is, the graph that represents the variation of polarization with in response to the applied electric field is called as ferroelectric hysteresis. To understand this, let us take a dielectric material and an electric field is applied to the dielectric material. So initially when electric field is applied, the response is very slow. So the polarization, that means the charge separation takes place very slowly up to a value. And you can see in the graph, the first one marked with the black. So initially as the electric field increases, the polarization also goes very slowly. Then more eventually it grows rapidly and it reaches a maximum value, which is called as a saturation polarization. So whenever you apply certain electric field, charge separation takes place, dipoles are created, the dipole moment per unit volume is polarization. So this polarization initially it is very slow, then it occurs, it becomes very rapid after some time of the applied electric field. It reaches a saturated value which is called as saturated polarization. Here at this point, at the saturated polarization, all dipoles they align in the direction of the field, giving rise to strong polarization values or dielectric constant values. If you further increase applied electric field, it will not be given any response because the dipoles are saturated here, and this is called as saturated polarization. And if you further apply electric field, it dissipates in the form of heat, but it will not give any polarization. Now, if you decrease the field, then what happens is this relation is a non-linear relation. It will not retrace its original path. Initially, it increases as per the black one, shaded one you can see. If you reduce the field, it cannot retrace its original path. It takes some another path represented by the green color you can see. So when you are reducing the electric field, it decreases in a different direction. It goes down, and it reaches a value PR for zero applied field. So here at the origin, the applied field is zero. Even for zero applied field, there exists some polarization in the material. That means there are some electric dipoles present in the material in one particular direction, causing certain polarization for the material. If you further decrease this value, then what happens? At one particular field known as the coercive field, the remaining dipoles are also take a random orientation. So the net polarization becomes zero. A ferroelectric material becomes a paraelectric material. So this is the field which is called as a coercive field. Here all the dipoles they take random orientation. A ferroelectric material it becomes a paraelectric material. Here it will not exhibit any dielectric properties, polarization values. If you change the direction of the field, then what happens? Again, in this direction also, initially slowly the dipoles are created and the polarization increases and it reaches in the negative y direction, the third quadrant, and here it gets a saturated value. If you decrease the field in this direction, then also the value it takes some another path. Even for the zero applied field, there exists some dipoles in the opposite direction, giving rise to the remittance polarization. Again, if you further decrease, then at the value of coercive field, it loses its ferroelectricity and it becomes a paraelectric. Like that, it completes the loop, which is called as hysteresis loop. In this way, this is a special behavior of a ferroelectric material. How the polarization changes with the applied electric field. This graph, this is called as ferroelectric hysteresis. Is it okay? Shall I explain once? So an important phenomena that can be exhibited by ferroelectric materials is ferroelectric hysteresis. So the graph that shows the relation between polarization and applied electric field is called as electric hysteresis. So whenever a dielectric material exhibits polarization, even in the absence of external electric field, then it is called as a ferroelectric material. So even applied field is zero. There are some dipoles orient in one particular direction, giving rise to certain dipole moment in this direction, so that they exhibit strong polarization values. These materials are called as ferroelectric materials. It is because of the nature of the material, depends on the nature of the material. And the dielectric constant value is some 3 orders greater than the value of ordinary dielectric material. And whenever a dielectric material is subjected to external electric field, as you increase the applied electric field, the polarization also initially increases very slowly, then more rapidly, and it reaches a saturated value. At the saturated value, all dipoles they orient in the direction of the applied field, giving rise to strong polarization phenomena. Beyond this, it will not give any further response. This is called as saturated polarization. And this relation, the variation of polarization with the electric field is a non-linear relation. If you decrease the field, then it will not take the original path, it takes some another path. Initially, it is represented by black color. Now, when you decrease the field, it is represented by a green one. It decreases in a different direction and reaches a value P suffix R, PR, which is called as a remnant polarization, even for zero applied field. So here, even the applied field value is zero at the origin, there exists some polarization, which is called as a residual polarization or remnant polarization. Here, some dipoles are available in the material, orient in one particular direction, giving rise to some net dipole moment, so that it exhibits a spontaneous polarization. This is a special feature of a ferroelectric material. If the field is further decreased, then all these remaining dipoles they take random orientation at one particular value of the field, which is called as